Alrighty, everybody. Hello. Happy Wednesday, February 23rd. I'm Kate Richburg, and it is time for Beadshop Live. You guessed it. So thank you all so much for joining me on this Wednesday morning. It looks like a bunch of you are popping on and a bunch of you are saying hello, so it's great to have you all here. Excellent. We're going to have a fun project today. You may have seen it in your newsletters this morning. I don't know what I was thinking. I do know. I wanted some fresh macrame projects, I guess. And so I've been planning this bezel project for a while. And I finally jumped in and did it. So I'm really excited to share it with you. There's probably, I don't know, I've kind of grabbed some of my knotting experience, and Emily was the one actually who who sent me a quick little reel of someone doing this bezeling project. And so I kind of watched it and I'm going to interpret that. So I made kind of a fun pendant here that I'm going to share with you. So I think you guys will love it. So as you guys are jumping on, let me just say that welcome to those of you who are our longtime watchers, and a big hello to those of you who are new watchers. I know that many of you watched our presentation this weekend on the Great Bead Extravaganza, and there are many of you who are watching on the Great Bead Extravaganza today, so thank you very much for that. We really appreciate your support and your orders are going out as we speak, so thank you so much for your patience with all of that. I also wanted to mention you can find all of the information Beadshop related. We've got a lot of social media outlets and a great place to follow us if you haven't done so already. Pop over to our Instagram and give us a follow at beadshop.com. And you can always tag us or give us an at Beadshop when you post one of our projects on your Insta. We've been reposting them on our Instagram stories. So if you want to tag us when you post any of your pieces, Drea always looks for those and she reposts them to our stories. And if you haven't checked out our Insta stories lately, they're really great. So much inspiration going on there. You can join us over at the Bead Table on Facebook. It's our Facebook group. Again, lots more inspiration over there as well. You can find a great community of beaders over there ready to ask questions and answer questions. It's a lot of fun. And of course, if you're watching on our YouTube channel, we would love it either now live or on our on the replay. Go ahead and give us a like and a follow and turn on those notifications so you will always get notified of when we go live and when we post new content. And of course, for the project today, you can find all of this information right on our website. You can sign up for our newsletter to get all of the latest news from beadshop.com, including new product drops and discounts and great fun like that. So you're going to want to jump over there and do that. So that business is taken care of. So it looks like Gita is over on Facebook doing some linking. Thank you so much there. And Janice is over on Facebook saying hello to everyone over there. So it's great to have all of you all here. Someone is saying that they had a great, fun, great bead extravaganza this weekend. It was a lot of fun. Boy, it's a lot of work that that whole event. All of our small business companies do this, all volunteer, right? We all have come together to kind of create this great force. So we really, really appreciate it, not only when you support us, but when you appreciate and support the whole group of those TGBE vendors and participants, because we've been friends in this industry for many, many, many years. So it's great to have that camaraderie and share that camaraderie with you. Okay, so let's take a look at the project, shall we? I think you guys are going to like it. I hope you do. And if you aren't a macrame-er, I would suggest starting. I've actually got them sitting right here. You can tell I'm at the Beadshop offices today, not from my home office. Though my studio, you guys, is getting painted and the lights are getting put up even as I broadcast today. So soon, hopefully, knock wood, about a month-ish out to have a new space to broadcast for you guys. So I'm excited. But if you haven't done macrame before, we have Macrame Basics that's on there. And I recorded this kind of basic tutorial for these guys. Let me solo this. You don't need to see me. You want to see the project here. And we talk about doing the beaded macrame, this twisted, the spiral macrame, the plain, the one with the beads. So if you need a little bit of a refresher, and these are just done as like in our Bollywood style of bracelets. So this is a great place to get started, and it's under our learning and just under our macrame basics. Okay, so I think you'll really get everything you need to know out of these guys here. Okay, and oh, thanks for the love for my earrings. Let me pull one of these down. These I do sometimes carry on my website, but right now I'm on a little bit of a making hiatus until my studio gets put back together. But there are a few things. I'm going to preload buttons and stuff again on my website, Kate Richburg Jewelry, eventually. So stay tuned. You know, we're going a mile a minute here. So, but thank you for the earring love. These are my favorite, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to wear a pair of Say Something earrings today. So let me show you. So I've got some things ready for you here, but I'm just gonna put it right here in the center is what I'm gonna do. Let me move this over. So I've got some blank space. So Janice was asking this morning when we were doing kind of our morning check-ins, you know, there's usually a flurry of texts back and forth from everybody talking about the, you know, what's going on for the morning. And so Janice asked, she said, how do you come up with these things? Well, I don't know. It's a product of an overactive brain, I think. But it's something that I've been ruminating on for a while. And a spot in the calendar kind of opened up. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to throw this bezel project right on here. And I don't know. It's been a few months, maybe even 6 months. I can't remember. 5 months, maybe. I don't know. Again, time is kind of nebulous, really. Emily sent me just a little quick, someone had done a reel on doing a bezel around a coin with macrame. And so it was really brief and not very detailed, but what I took away from it was that it was the lark's head knot going back and forth over 2 base cords. Okay, so I figured, all right, I know how to do that. I'm just going to take it from there. So I know that there are probably other ways to achieve this type of a bezel. Let me get a little tighter here so you can see it. Other ways to achieve this, but this is my take on it. So, and you know, I like to layer. And so I thought about doing a lot of things here. And I'm going to play around with this lapis piece today. And I thought about gluing. Because, you know, we like to glue here at Beadshop. And I thought about gluing the I Ching coin to the pie disc. But something just held me back. I was like, I don't, because what I wanted it, my thinking behind it, and I always like to make a little story kind of in my head about the piece. So the story about this piece would be that maybe I was, I don't know, hiking in the mountains or I don't know, on some kind of adventure. And I unearthed this amulet that I then, I don't know, wore and it came around the world with me in my adventures. I don't know. We read too many old novels, I think, or watch too many old movies. But that's kind of the feeling that I wanted from this. And glue didn't fit, okay, in my narrative that was in my head. So I started off with just bezeling this piece, this pie, right? Like this. And I liked it, but I felt like it was a little plain. So I thought, well, if I can bezel this, why don't I bezel this too and layer it, okay? And I wanted it to have a little bit of a different look. So you can see I did the macrame just up to where there's, I don't know, about a quarter of an inch or so left on either side of this coin. And so you could use a real coin for this. Like if you have old, you know how I like my coins, right? So you could do this with a souvenir coin that you might have in your stash or collection. You can do anything here. This is also a great stash buster. I'm going to introduce some of our new Matubos. These 2-aughts really, they really figure prominently in this project, and I'm going to talk about this portion in a minute. First, I'm going to talk about this, and then we'll get to this part. So then I layered this on top, and I just went into my treasure trove, literally, of techniques. And you know how I like to silk wrap, especially silk wrapping with leather. So I silk wrapped all these together, and then I macrameed a bail, and then came down around and macrameed that bail so it looped around. I also I thought about how I was going to connect this piece to, okay? And I thought, well, at first I thought I would just do this. I would make this macrame piece. Let me put this up a little bit here. Yeah, you could do a check button. People are putting in so many ideas. Like a check button would be great, or subway tokens would work. You bet. You could old wooden nickels, which I don't know, Nancy, that's kind of fun, right? Old tokens of any kind. And the cool thing about it is that the piece that you bezel retains the integrity of the piece. You don't have to put a hole in it. You don't have to glue it. It just kind of sits there in the bezel. Okay, so here is, so I started making this. So I made this piece first. Okay, all right, I made like this piece, but I didn't make the loop or anything. And so I did this piece first. And then I went and I tackled what it was going to hang on, because I felt that I didn't want it to be an afterthought, but I also didn't want to take away from what I was doing that much either, but I wanted it to have its own like beauty of the piece. Okay, so I first I just made, it was this side, right? So I used this serpentine barrel as the closure, though you could get a button and do this, but I used the serpentine barrel, right? And so that was kind of fun to as the closure, and you can see how that closure is here. But again, you could use whatever you want to do. Okay, and so I thought that I would make this base strand, and then I would just make a spot here that has plain macrame, and then I would just slide this on like this, right? Let me get a little closer so you can see that. And I did that, and I was like, I don't know. It wasn't very exciting. And so someone here, Susan, says, it reminds her of an ancient watch fob. Susan, that's so funny that you say that, because I'm a huge fan of the watch fob, especially a vintage one. And so I wanted something that kind of set this off a little. So I'm using this hammered link from Tiara Cast here. And so it made it so if I covered this up, this piece, you could use this piece a lot of different ways, right? You could string it in a necklace. You could hang it as a watch fob. You could make it a little bit smaller. This is the 40 millimeter disc, but you could go down to the 30 millimeter. You could just do a coin like this that doesn't have the big pie behind it. So, you know, whatever works for you. But I kind of wanted to throw a lot of interesting connectors. So I thought that putting this ring, and again, you could use anything for this ring. You could use the I Ching coin up here, right? Because it has a hole. So be as creative as you can possibly be. So then this was complete. And then I started on the, I continued to work on this piece. I wanted the piece to be fairly monochromatic because I didn't want this portion to take away too much from what was happening here, because there's a lot going on here, right? Oh, I'm loving that you guys are liking my nails. Since I'm not metalsmithing as much right now, very little, I thought that I would pay attention to my nails. I think it's hilarious that you guys are noticing. So thank you. Thanks for rewarding my efforts. They're going to go back to metalsmithing nails soon, you guys. So they're kind of fun. They kind of look like geodes, what I was going for here. So anyway, um, so what I did was, this is when the Matubos came into play. We just launched them, and I've got a bunch of new ones. Matubos are check glass beads. So let's shift gears for just a moment and let me talk about these. We launched them yesterday, I think, and you guys, we have some that we've always carried. But you guys were just like, oh my gosh, we love these Matubos. So if you see things that are sold out, because some have sold out, just put your name on the notification list. I know that Janice is working on a reorder of some of them, and um, supply chain being what it is right now during the pandemic, worldwide supply chain is crazy. So if you see them um, and they're out, put your name on the list, and you will get a notification as soon as they're back in. And Cora's asking, yes, these are Color Street, these nails. I have my sister-in-law to thank for that. So anyway, yeah, look at the wasabi, this wasabi nebula right here. I think it thought you guys loved it so much that I think currently right now it's sold out, but just hang tight, put yourself on the notification. They'll be back in. So there's that one. I am kind of in love with this green, and I thought that that green and mustard might be kind of interesting. I don't know. Um, but there's this lemon, the Rembrandt. This is the one I'm using, the turquoise green bronze luster is what I'm using with the lapis. And what I used here, I can't ever pass up something metallic, the jet matte bronze Matubo. And so these are 2 millimeter, okay? And the 2 millimeter, or not 2 millimeter, 2/0 of the is the size here. So these are also kind of known as they'd also be known kind of as a roller bead or a small pony bead as well. Some of these beauties have really beautiful coatings, like the travertine coating, like the Picasso coating. Some are just beautifully transparent. Some have a luster. So you can go over to beadshop.com and check them all out. Okay, so Matubos is something, we just love them around here. So let me show you then, we're going to table this, this piece for the moment, and I'm going to show you what I've done here. I've got all the components for this upcoming, this next piece. So let me show you here, and let me show you some of my measurements and stuff. Okay, and then I'm going to demo how to do this capturing piece. It's easier than you think. Okay, so what I've done for the project here, for the pie discs, I started out with doing the 40 millimeter lapis disc, and the discs have different widths to them, and you can see kind of how wide these are, right? I started out by just doing something like this smaller one, but since the edge of the lip or whatever of this disc was bigger, and I felt that this was going to slide off, it wasn't right. Okay, and plus I wanted it to be visually a little heavier because this disc was so big. So usually when you do this, you have a base strand. I've used 0.5 millimeter CKC here, Chinese knotting cord, for both the base and the lark's head knots. And that works perfectly for this coin. But I had a scrap of leather sitting on my table at home, and I happened to have 1 millimeter leather. So that's what I went with. You could go a little bit bigger if you wanted, but I feel like 1.5 millimeter might be too large. You could also go down to a 0.5 millimeter leather for this base. You could go to a zero point 0.8 Chinese knotting cord, or you could do this 0.5, but you want to have the opening go a little bit wider. And I'm going to show you how I do that in a second. Okay, so this is the 0.5 millimeter Chinese knotting cord over the base cords of the 1 millimeter leather. This is the 0.5 CKC with the CKC as the base cords and the lark's head knots. Over here, you can see what's different because I don't like to repeat, and I wanted to see if it would work. The necklace part, or the neck part that I did for the one that I called Discovery, the one with the carnelian pie, this has a base cord of the 0.5 millimeter CKC, and then I've gone over the top with the 0.5 CKC as well, okay, for those flat macrame. I wanted to see if it would work, and I think it will. So on this one that I call Voyager, I used the 0.5 CKC in the Williamsburg blue, and then I used double strand of the 1 millimeter, and those Matubos, they're a little bit of a tight fit, but they work on that base. You could always go down to the 0.5 millimeter leather as well. And I'm going to show you how I cut this leather so that these Matubos go on. I'm going to use that same serpentine barrel up here, and I'm just doing the same thing. It's just the base that's a little bit different, and I think how I'm going to close this off to loop it is going to be a little bit different as well. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to loop it here. Okay, but first, let's get to this bezeling stitch. Okay, I'm going to clear away very carefully these guys because I'm going to need them in a second. But I want to show you how I do this. Okay, so let me get. I'm just going to do it on the. Maybe I'll do this. Do I have a scrap of leather here? Will this fit across? It will. I'm going to do this over this 1 millimeter leather so you can see the contrast. Okay, and if I were doing this for the bezel, what I do is I get my clamps and I'm clamping it to the board, to my board here, and you'll see that. And I'm going to clamp it here. And then I'm going to bring this strand down next to it and clamp it. And I want to make sure that the width that I leave is wide enough so that when the bezel wraps around the pie, it's going to come up and around the side of the disc so it won't throw it out. You know, it won't come out, right? So here, let me clamp. I'm going to clamp this over here. And you just kind of have to do this by sight. Okay, so when they come down and I clamp them to the other side, this side and this side, and I'm just doing this with my clamps so they're connected to the board here, and I'm using this design tray, our black design tray. So here's this, and I'm gonna kind of put it there and see how it works. Sharon's asking, could this be made on a tying station or on a loom? I'm sure it could. Whatever works to clamp down your threads, you know, for macrameing should work. So I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer here about what you're doing on the base. I use our bead design tray so much, and it has this nice lip to clamp to, and I like the velvet pad underneath, so that's what I'm using. Okay. So I'm going to reel off for this disc. I used, I need to make 5 inches of knotted section. About. You have to do some and then you have to measure it around your disc, because even though these are 40 millimeters, the diameter is 40 millimeters, um, it may vary just a little bit, okay? But about 5 inches is what you want to do for this. And so I'm going to get my Chinese knotting cord, the 0.5 millimeter, and I used the moss because I wanted it to have some contrast, but you could use something that matches. You can do whatever you want, okay, with this, whatever works for you. And so for this, to start out, for this knot tying, I reeled off about 4 feet of this Chinese knotting cord. Okay, I'm not going to reel off 4 feet for just this little demo. I'm going to reel off about 2 feet. But about 4 feet should get you that length that you need, because this does take up a lot of cord. Now to start, and it's both for this one and for this one. And by the way, for the coin, this is about 2.5 inches, maybe a little bit less, again, depending on the size of the I Ching coin. Okay, so I'm going to start from the left-hand side, and I'm going to mount my thread, my tying thread, on my base cords. I'm going to find the center, and I'm just going to tie a lark's head knot. So I get my loop through into the center, bring those tails through, and tie it on. Okay, and I'm going to go in the center here. Okay, and I'm going to work down and then I'm going to work up. And the reason that I do this for this one, and you can see now that I pointed out with this. With this one, I started on the end, the edge right here, this end, and I went all the way around. And I found that my bezel kind of grew in and out a little bit as I was doing this. And so when I did this second one here, I wanted to make sure that the tension was super even. So I started in the middle and worked my way out, and it worked better for tension. Okay, so all you do is you start with that lark's head knot to mount, and I'm going to get down here nice and close. And we've done this before. I'm going to take this top cord, I'm going to put that out of the way because I'm going to return to it. And we just tie that lark's head with this cord. We continue to tie it all the way down, going back and forth on these base cords. So I go, and this knot's in 2 parts. So I go over my right hand cord with my tying cord, under that cord to create the loop and pull it up. And now I do the same thing, but instead of going over, I go under that cord and tighten. Okay, and you have to kind of establish this first one so that you have your width. Okay, and let me measure it so you can see it, because I have no idea. I'm just guessing. And don't measure, just kind of eyeball it. The space in between there is about a little more than 7.5 millimeters. Okay, so about that should do it, because you want this bezel to capture this, not lay kind of like down there, but you really want it to fold over the edges of this disc. Okay, so now I continue with this tying cord. So I bring it from the right hand base over to the left hand, and I just go over the base. I grab it from underneath and pull it tight. And now I go with my tying cord under the base cord and through the loop and tighten. Okay, and now I zigzag back over. See, it wants to lay over the cord, so don't disrupt it. Just come in. You can basically just come in. There's the loop, really. You see that it's kind of in this little triangle shape. So you just get your cord, push it up in that triangle, tighten it down, and then bring it down under the base cord. You've got a loop there, and send it through that little tunnel and tighten it up. Okay, so now see there's the triangle. So your cord comes up in that triangle. To make it a little bit bigger though. There you go. It loops around. Now you bring it down under that base cord. See how it makes that loop? What I do is I like to bring my fingers through that loop and grab that cord. And I kind of do that same thing. I bring my fingers through the loop and grab the cord. And that's kind of how I go a little bit faster with this. You just want to make sure, I'm going to show you, I'm going to tie one incorrectly. So see how I've come and I've gone over? What if I go over again instead of under? Can you see how the stitch looks different? It's not this nice little scallop, but it looks more like a blanket stitch would, right? And I'm sure this trick will come in handy. This technique will come in handy, but that's not what we're looking for. It looks like a lot of you want to learn how to bezel with wire. Well, I will, whoops, I tied that again intentionally wrong. There we go. I will work on bezeling with wire. As you know, wire is my spirit animal. So I promise there will be more wire work adventures with bezeling. Okay. So here we go, and you just continue back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, okay, until you get this, okay? And so this length, and you want to try and be as even as you can with your stitches, but can you see here, right here, the spacing's a little off, maybe it's a little off here. It's never going to be noticed when you pull it around, okay? So you're going to get your disc, and you're going to just check once you have about 5 inches. Let me measure this first. Yeah, just shy of 5. I might have to tie a couple more. And you can also make this as tight, the stitches as tight as you want them to be. We get this around. So see here, I've got the bezel coming around, and it just comes around to the top here. Okay, so that looks right. All right, so I'm going to set that aside for the moment. You can also make your stitches tighter, like you could push them tightly together. That means you're going to need more thread, right? And that the bezel is going to be a little more dense around the stone, right? But you choose. And then you're going to do the same thing, and you're going to make this section, okay, to fit around the disc. So let's get to that part. So what I did was as I was macrameing this piece, it goes up like this. When I was doing it on the yellow, I didn't want the bezels to match. I wanted some differentiation. So I took it off to measure, and as I wrapped it around the coin, I saw that I was short, but I thought, oh, I don't mind the look of that at all, so I'm going to keep it, okay? So what I did was, and I want to end it here. Can you see, and this is kind of important for this, can you see how I've ended it so there's a loop on both sides, on the same side here? There's not one loop up there and one loop down there. Because what that does is, when I get it and I put this around the coin, as I bring it up and I pull these strands tightly together, that doubled over strand kind of sits together. And I had it go on the front. I want this to be a little tighter here, because I want a little more of that thread exposed. And it can come unknotted, so you kind of have to be a little careful with this until it all gets into place. But see how I've kind of pushed that down just a little bit here? Now I'm going to put it, see how you can see that the double strands are coming across here and the single strand is on the back. Okay, that's what you want. You just want it to be consistent. It doesn't matter really what's in the front and in the back. So I'm going to get myself a piece of cord ready so I'm ready to silk wrap this closed, because that's what I do next. We're going to bring it together and silk wrap this closed together here. Then we're going to do this part, lay it all down and silk wrap it. Okay, so you've got to do the small one first. So I don't know, about a foot of CKC. You've seen me silk wrap before, but you know, again, it's good to kind of have a lot of techniques in your beading treasure chest so that you can pull them out as needed. I want to make sure I don't get these upside down. I think they go this way. These I Ching coins are the real deal. These are real old ones. We get them from a good vendor friend of ours who we've been buying from for, I don't know, 30 years or so. I used to buy from him from my store in San Francisco. We bought from him for the Beadshop when we had brick and mortar. So we know these are the real deal. And see here how this is kind of open in, it's kind of, the knot is kind of pulled away. So I'm going to fix that. And I'm going to do that with my chain nose, my bent chain nose. I want to kind of bring it back down. There we go to tighten it back up. It's going to want to come open a little bit, but I didn't want it to come up quite that far. And my double strands are coming in the front, though they can come around to the back. Doesn't really matter. Okay, but you want to nestle it. See how it's there in the back, and see how it is in the front. Now, this is when I want an extra pair of hands, right? So I'm going to hold this tightly here, and I'm going to get my piece ready for silk wrapping. This is that foot. I don't know, I've done this about 3 inches maybe here. I've curved it around, and this is the loop. When I wrap, I'm going to wrap with this tail around everything up towards that loop. Okay, so here's, I kind of lay it on here. And I kind of have to keep everything as tight as I can. So see, I've got my wrapping thread. This is the thread I'm going to come to pull later to pull that loop down. Here's my loop under here. And here's all my random strands that I did the macrame with. Okay. So now I'm going to take this wrapping strand, bring it around. I want this first wrap to be nice and tight. Okay, because this has to capture everything in with the tension. So now that I've wrapped and it's captured, I can switch hands and I can come in and keep going. Now you can make this silk wrap as long as you want it to be, right? This looks about right. I don't know, maybe 1/4 of an inch. Then I'm going to try and find that loop, that other end of the silk wrap. Here it is. I'm going to bring that tail through the loop of the silk wrap, and now I'm going to pull that loop down. And I could have done all of this on the back of the coin. I don't know why I didn't, but in case there's any little flaw or whatever, it'll go to the back, but it'll look fine. You won't be able to tell. See how I'm pinching that little wrap that I did? And so that connection, it pulled the loop underneath that wrap. So it's in there, it's tight. And I should have paid attention. I think it's this one that I pulled through. Yeah. So I just tighten it up. Okay. So that joins its fellows up there. And this, you could, I don't know, dangle something or whatever, but I'm going to cut it away because I don't need it. And again, that's why this, I might want it in the back, but I'm just going to cut it under tension, being very careful not to clip anything else. Okay, so here we go. So this is done. Now, this piece on its own would make a great bottom for an earring, right? You could split these strands now. You could, I don't know, macrame, or you've got a lot of stuff going on here. So you could do some fancier macrame. You could do like split 3 and 3 and do some, I don't know, laddering in there. I don't know. The world's your oyster with this little connection, right? But we're going to put this aside for a second and we're going to get this one over here. So I've done the same thing, but I have the 1mm leather as my base. I want this line of pyrite to be at the bottom here. Yeah, that's where I want it. So I'm going to try and keep it there, but we'll see. Now on this, you can see I silk wrapped using the 1mm leather, okay, which is a little bit different. I wanted a contrast, so I used it. I'm going to show you, my leather fell on the ground. Let me grab it. I'm going to show you how I do that. I'm going to cut maybe another, I don't know, foot from my 4-yard bit of leather here. And I kind of need to have everything in place so I can get this piece together, get all of these pieces together. And if it's, see how right here, the bezeling strands are right up here. I think I want to push them down just like a touch because the silk wrap needs a little spot to sit at the top of the disc. Yeah, see that there? Where that comes? I think that's a little bit better. And you can see how this leather has locked that disc in. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to come in with my, here's all my cords underneath. All right. And I can't forget, because when I did this the first time, I silk wrapped this closed and I didn't add the disc. So I had to cut away the silk wrap. I had to do all of that. So if you're putting this disc on, you got to put it on and then also grab it with all this business here. So see what's under there? And you want to try and make the strands not unruly. Okay, that's my criteria. And see here, I also want this to have a little bit of thread there so it has some movement. I could, if I had a large hole bead, I could put a big hole bead there and pull that down a little bit further, but I wanted the holes of these two discs to kind of line up. Okay, so let me get, I'm going to turn this now to the back because I actually want to silk wrap this from the back, and you'll see why in a second. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to get that loop. I'm going to kind of shove that loop. Again, this is where I need more hands. Shove that loop kind of underneath there. Here's my wrapping strand. And I just want to get that first silk wrap strand around so it's tight. And now I want to turn it over. See how that slipped up a little bit? So I need to pull that back down. I'll pull that in back. There we go. And so that pull strand is back there. So I know it's fine. I can hold it here. I can kind of arrange everything. And I can continue to wrap. Now, you don't, if you're like, oh my gosh, Kate, this silk wrapping with all of your fingers and all of this, you could just macrame this, okay? You could also get like a big, you could wrap it with wire. All of this might fit in one of our Evolve crimp beads, the big barrel crimps, right? So you don't have to silk wrap it, but I love the way the silk wrapping looks. Okay, so here, and I think that's about right, here on the back. Now, if anything is loose or funny, or, you know, like if you had extra space up here, see how it's a little loose? What I can do is, that's my loop. This actually, it's a loop, but it's actually two separate strands. Okay, so let me cut it so you don't get confused. I can pull, see how I can pull these strands so it kind of tightens up a little bit so that it just cinches everything together. There we go. I just pulled those just a hair, and I think I need to pull that one just a little, that leather cord, that leather cord, and that leather cord, which makes it a little easier if you're using different cords for the base than you are for the knotting, right? Because then you can see which cords to pull. So hopefully this hasn't loosened up too much. Let me tighten up this silk wrap just a little. Okay. So now, here we go. There's my loop, right? Just like a regular silk wrap. Get all this out of the way, right? But it's just with leather. This time, here's my wrapping cord. Now, I just take this through. I come through. Whoops, wrong one. I take this through my wrapping cord, not my bottom cord. Take it through, and now I pull. Now, with this 1mm leather, okay, it's a little bit different than your Chinese knotting cord in that it does not really pull under the silk wrapping. So what I do is I have a little bit of GS Hypo, and see where I added it right there. So when I pull this tight, that connection there is glued. And you can see that it all tightens up really nicely. Now I'm going to let all of this sit. If this were a real project, you know, like a project that wasn't a demo project, I would let all of this sit overnight to let the glue cure, okay? But instead, I'm going to add just a little bit more glue right there. Make sure I can put my arm in it. So that this cord is glued in place. And I'm using the GS Hypo. I don't want to use Zap. Zap is too stiff for this. Okay. So now I've got all of this. So now I take away some of these cords, right? Because it's just too much here to macrame and stuff. I'm going to take out, so let's figure out what cords go where. Okay, we've got this cordy mess here. So I'm going to get the longest of my two Chinese knotting cords, which are these, and I'm going to pull these out to the side. This one and this one. There we go. Okay. And I'm going to kind of bring it over here. Maybe it wants to go behind, I think. There we go. So these are going to be the two cords that I'm going to macrame with. Okay. So now I can start getting rid of some of this business here. So I'm going to use my wire cutters, and I'm going to get rid of some of the leather cord. And I just, before I do that, I want to make sure that everything, like if I have to just pull each of these to make sure everything is tight. There we go. That's that little bump I saw in there. There we go. That was bothering me. There we go. Nice and tight and clean. Okay. Again, there's no glue here. This isn't gonna, this is nice and tight in there. It's not gonna come out. I'm gonna get it a little closer to my focal distance here because I just want to check that everything is where it should be. So sorry about that. Look at my wire cutter for just a second while I get it a little closer in my focal range. So when I cut, I know I'm not cutting anything incorrectly. Okay, yes, looks good. And these, again, are my two that I'm going to be macrameing with. So let's get rid of this one. We don't need this. So I'm going to come in with my cutter, cut that one away. I don't need this one. That was my puller. So I'm going to cut that away. I pretty much don't need any of the leather, except I'm going to keep this one that was my piece that went through my loop, because that will make it all that much more sturdy if that one gets wrapped or macrameed into my piece. That's the right one. Okay. And I think I can get rid of, whoops, I don't want to get rid of that one. I don't want to get rid of that one. I'll put those to the side over there. Let me get rid of this kind of short one, maybe. And then I kind of want to see, that seems about right, that width for the bail. Okay, so now let's connect this to the board and macrame that bail. So I need to lash this down. So I'm just going to get a piece of cotton cord here. Let me make that even. The cotton cord is here. And I'm going to go through. And I'll just clamp it right there. And I'll bring, I don't want these. These are going to be what I'm macrameing with. So again, take those out. Maybe they want to switch. Yeah, there we go. I like the looks of that. Ideally, I want the longest one, but I also see how this one is sitting a little nicer for macrame, and it's not that much shorter, so I'm actually going to use that one. I think that looks better. I'm going to bring all of this down, and I'm going to clamp it then to the other side of the board. Let me get myself just a little more room here. All right, so this is ready. Okay, so now I'm just going to macrame starting from the top of this silk wrap with the leather. And I need enough so I come up and then I can go around and then macrame back down to close it. It has to go around and then I have to capture this ring in the loop. So I don't know. Let's measure as I go along, but let me just start it and then I'll measure. This first one, I want it to come down and I want it to kind of cover that little piece of leather right there, if I can. Or I can try and get my cutter. I don't know if I can get any more of that cut away. Maybe I can get it on there. Well, and when I come back down over the top, it's going to cover it. So I don't know why I'm freaking out about it. Just keep going, Richburg. Okay, so this is the flat macrame knot that we all know and love and do. And with all of these threads underneath it, it gives me a nice large bail. I can see a little bit of inconsistency going around, but no one will notice. I'm just being a little fussy about it. I don't know. Don't be too precious about this, right? Just do it. So we're macrameing the front of the bail now. This needs to be maybe about an inch. or thereabouts. I'll see. I'm going at Kate speed here, but essentially we're just tying those 2 half hitches to create that full square knot. So again, I start on the left, I make that loop, take my right hand cord, my working cord now over that tail, under the base center cords, and back and up through that loop. Then I repeat it on the other side, create a loop, base cord over the tail, working cord over the tail, under the base cord, and up through the loop. Again, on beadshop.com, we have a really good tutorial on how to do this basic square knot. So we're getting close to, I think, the point where I can flip this over. Let me do like 2 more. 1 and 2. Now I'm going to get my ring. This is that medium. Okay, so I'll come in. I'm going to leave it connected. All of this like long short business right here is bugging me. So I'm going to get rid of it. I'm just going to, because I don't need that much now, and it'll be easier for me to work with if all of these are even. So I'm going to even everything up and just cut it all right there. There we go. That's better. Now I'm able to get this through the ring. There we go. And this goes to the back. And you can see that this has enough room here to move around. And this, I'll come around and continue my knots. So let me just tighten that up because it got a little bit loose. So this length, this total length, let me measure it so you know what it is. And I think I'm going to add like, yeah, that's about an inch. I'm going to add like maybe 2 more knots. The clearance inside the loop when the ring is on, it's just a hair, like 2 knots too small. So I'm going to put them in. Better to do it now and have nice movement in your piece. There we go. Let's put that ring back on. Pull this out. Okay. And so now I come around, and what I do here is I clamp it closed. I use my clamper and I come in and I make sure it's all even and I clamp it. Okay, because what I'm going to have to do now is macrame all of this, right? So it captures that front and the back. Okay. Now I don't have to put an extra cord here. I think that this will weight it down enough. So let's take a look. And what I'm going to do is I like to macrame down towards me. So I'm just going to come around so that I'm macrameing it down this way. Maybe I do want to connect it down. I've got a little piece of cord somewhere here. Let me see. Just to keep it, if my piece that I'm macrameing is taut on the board, it makes my stitches, yeah, see, that's better. It makes my stitches nice and even. And again, remember the glue that I've used is the GS Hypo Cement, not the Zap or the E6000. So I also want to show you guys, and I showed you this last week, okay? And I'm not going to glue it, not yet. All right, I'm going to show you when I glue. I showed you last week, you can see that there is a disparity between this really long thread, you can't, but I'll show you, and this kind of short thread here. And I had that happen to me when I was working on the piece too, on this other piece. And so what I did was I used my thread burner and I connected two pieces of the CKC. So I'm going to do that here. I could probably get away with this, but this piece is a little short and I want to show you this trick again. So, because it comes in handy. I should have taken the top off of the thread burner. Let me get it in frame. So you can see I'm holding it here and I can come in and I can touch those two. I turn on my thread burner by pressing it. It's going to burn away a little bit of extra cord it's got on there. And I kind of burn the ends. And then while they're melty, I touch them together. Now you want to make sure that you're using this thread burner in a well-ventilated area. Let it hold for a moment. And then can you see how those two, they're connected? Now my goal, if I did this, and you can see there's one of those connections, there's several of those connections in this piece, but I did it in here. It's somewhere here and I can't even see it. The goal is to have that little connection point come somewhere. Oh, it's right here. You can hardly see it. Whoops. You can't see it because I'm not in frame. It's just there, right? It's really hard to see. So as you're tying your knots, if you feel like this is going to end up in the wrong place, you can cut it and re-singe it, right? So here's this. And now I'm going to just knot all of these together. And I'm working on the back side of this now. So see, my first one comes in, it tightens everything up. This is all laying fairly flat. This could also be the front, and you could use these legs as fringe, right? But I'm not gonna, because I use that CKC instead, or the I-Ching coin instead, I-Ching coin. So this tightens down. Now once I have a couple of knots there, I can get rid of that clamp. And this is where I also want to start adding my glue. Okay, so I put a little bit of my glue out on a baggie, and I'm going to use the toothpick here. And I'm going to put a little bit of glue, not a ton, but enough so that when I do my macrame, I'm going to macrame over that glue. Okay. There we go. So now I'm going to keep going. Come on. Tightens up, squeezes into that glue. And I want to do this until I reach make sure the front looks right here, that my stitches aren't twisted. That looks good. I'm going to do one last one, and we're going to glue everything. So I'm going to get my thread, my final knot, And I'm going to get my toothpick and my GS. It's a little too much there. Put a little glue on the inside of that loop. A little glue on the inside of that loop. A little glue right where that last strand is going to go. Okay, now let's tighten. There we go. And I just want to make sure that that's going to be nice and tight there. I'm going to check how the front looks. Front looks good, clean. And again, if this were real jewelry time, and I'm going to set it aside for now to let this dry, but I'm going to come in and I'm going to get rid of some of these extras here. First, this piece of leather cord. And now these two, being very careful not to clip any of the macrame that I've done, or the, I'm going to get my thread snips. I don't know why I'm using those. There we go. Being very careful when I'm clipping away. There we go. And now I could come in. Do I have room on the front? I'm okay. I think that'll be all right. I'm just going to trim that one. And this is something, you know, one of my adages that I say about doing beadwork, sorry, let me get it down there, is that I don't like doing any of the finishing when right after I do the construction part. So all of this little fussy detail work here, I would wait, because after I do this, I, finish this piece up, I'm so like hyped up, like, woo, I did it, that sometimes my tool will slip and then it's nothing but tears, right? So there's this. Okay, so I would probably put this aside and then do all that clipping and stuff later, but that piece is done. Okay, so then what I did was I came in and I did these sections for it to connect to for the necklace. Okay. And so John is asking, is that hammered loop going to be big enough? Yeah, so I was wondering that myself when I made this. And so I also had at home the 1-inch loop, right? We also have the oval loop and stuff like that, but it fits just fine. And you can see I'm going to close this one up and it'll be kind of tight, but there'll be plenty of movement on all of them. But you can use a larger loop or fabricate your own loop, whatever works for you. I wanted it to be more about the piece than the loop, but I honestly actually don't mind how that big loop looks either. Okay, and as long as there's enough movement, and see how there's movement here for this, you're going to be fine. Okay, so let me just set that to the side. So what I did was I started with the button side because I had to have the button side completed before I made the loop side. So I just started. I got my serpentine barrel. I had another one sitting here somewhere, but I have no idea where it is at the moment. I cut, I'll tell you, 2.5 yards. No, I'm lying to you. This length for the base cord, I cut 1 yard and doubled it over and put it through the button, the serpentine barrel, and tied the knot there. Okay. Then with the macrame cords, I cut 2.5 yards and I brought it around to the center of the cords and started my flat macrame. Then, and you can see this one like I talked about at the beginning of the show, I did this one on a leather base instead of a Chinese knotting cord base, so it looks a little bit different. But I just figured out how long I wanted this to begin right here. So I wanted a little bit of room. I don't know, maybe for flexibility or I don't know, whatever. You design this however you want it to be. That's about 1 inch. And then I started my bead work. And then with my beads, what I did was, this is about 25 or 26 beads on here. So I just slid them up on the cords, put them, slid it up to where I wanted it to be. And then of course I've got this, just like the poetry project, right? Like we've done. I clamp this down to the board. And then I just, this has really long cords here. Let me get the glue out of the way so I don't glue my hand to the table. And in between each of the beads, I tied 1, 2, 3 knots and slid the next one up. And I did clusters of 5 and then a single bead. But you do whatever works. So there's, see, so I've got those 2. I slide this on and I tie 1, 2. This also looks great as just part of a wrap bracelet, right? And 3. Slide it up. And remember, you start, see this side that has the little scallop? So that's the side I know needs my loop. So I slide this up, make my loop, tying thread over the tail and under the center base cord, and tighten. And switch to the other side, and tighten. And the Matubo I'm using for this is the turquoise green bronze luster. I also told you I'd show you my little trick for getting the Matubos on here. So let me just tie a couple more and then I'll show you. So that's 5. So then I wanted a little bit of space. Okay, like this. Then I think I tied 4 sets because I wanted a little bit of space around a single. Now you could add, especially with this leather, you'd need a bead with a pretty big hole, but you could add some kind of specialty bead in between like this. I wanted all of the beads to kind of be the same. I wanted a visual impact with these Matubos, but I didn't want it to take away of the complexity of the centerpiece. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. I need 1 more. I'm counting the little scallops that are there, so I know that's 4. 2, 4, 2, and 4. Now I slide up another bead, and I want to make sure that this leather is flat, that it's not twisted. And then I'll do my single with 4 below it. And all the products that I've used in these, they're all on the beadshop.com website. So if you jump over to Beadshop, and you'll see this is the main photo right now if you're watching this live. You'll see this. This is the sample that's called Voyager. But if you click on the photo, it'll bring you to the project, and there's a full ingredients list along with links to our product that's on the website. And we really do appreciate when we do these live broadcasts that you jump on and, if you're going to make the project, you get some of your components from us. We really appreciate that because we work hard to get you guys going here with your creativity. So we always appreciate your support on that. And I think Gita just posted the link to it too in the chat there. So there's the 3. Sorry, I need 3. I'm back to my row of 5. Let me just do these, and then I'm going to add some more beads, and I'll show you how I do that. And then I'll show you how we close it up. We're literally on the home stretch here. And you want to measure. I'll show you where this is sitting on my neck, and I haven't really carefully measured, so I'm hoping it's going to work. But something like this, I think you either want to have it sit pretty long, or you want it to have it sit pretty high up so it has a nice drape under your neck, but not too drapey, right? So as you're making this piece, you want to kind of think about the length. And I'll show you with this one, how I did it. So there you go. Now it's time to add your next, more beads. So what I did, because these Matubos are a tight fit, if you want something that has a little bit less of a struggle, get some 0.5 millimeter leather for the base. Okay, I use the 1 millimeter because that's what I had, and I had this idea literally right before I went on air. You can just use the 0.5 CKC. You can see that and see how it gives you a little bit of a slimmer silhouette. But it's kind of cool with the leather because you can actually see a little bit of the leather under the stitching, which I like. So I've angle cut this leather. And I'm going to put the Matubo on one, and then I put the Matubo on the next one. And I just kind of push it through. And as soon as I see that leather emerging, I grab onto it and slide it up. Okay? And again, it's a little bit of a tight fit, but not super tight. The different leathers, it says that they're 1 millimeter, but let me actually measure this leather, because depending on if the leather is a coated leather or a natural leather or whatever, the diameter is going to vary probably just a little bit. So this leather is actually 1.2 millimeter, so it's a little bigger. The leather that I used here, this distressed gray, this is actually 1 millimeter, right? So there's a little bit of variance in this leather cord, and that's just the nature of the cord. Okay, so now to figure out the length, what I did, and I'm going to add my myself back in here so you can see. Let me and I'm going to take these off here, and I'll show you. So I came in, and so this button is right at the back of my neck. And so this is going to hang about right here, okay? So I want a little bit of a drape here. So that looks about right. So this length is, I'll measure this for you, from the bottom of the button. Let me just get my tape measure. There we go, so you can see this. From the bottom of the button to where I started that loop, it's about 9.5 inches. Okay. So I did the same thing here with this one. Okay, and I started with the loop. And what I did was I just made my flat piece, flat, flat, flat. I came around macrameed around, cut away the extra tails, and continued to macrame, right, to create that loop just like I did here. Okay, and then I made sure that the loop that I made fit nicely. And so now it's time to do my loop. So you can see this again is about an inch of macrame, and I'll come in and I'm going to do this just as I did that other cord, right? So I bring it through, I bring it around the back, and I'm going to measure, or I'm going to just macrame all of these together. So I've got the loop. So Kim is asking, the length of the loop side seems to give me trouble. How do I address the length so that the button sits in the middle? Well, that's a great question. Let me see if it's going to fit, actually. And I have to confess that it would be sitting correctly. And I don't know, this just kind of comes out right? But can you see the mistake? And I was too far in to go back. But see how it goes 5, 1, 5, and then see this 1 is missing from this side. So that was kind of a bummer. And I noticed it right as I was finishing this section. So I thought about making these match, and that's probably what I should have done, because if you take this out and you just do it here, you can see that it just sits in the center like that. So you just kind of have to play around with it, Kim, but I made this loop section. See how that loop right here is about like this is about even, and I have a little bit of extra to go around there. So that's how I kind of looked at it. So see, the loop actually comes down a lot further, and this side and this side aren't exactly the same on the back. Okay. So I'm just going to not worry about that little gaff that I have in here. I'm going to chalk it up to the bead gods. Okay. So, or bead goddesses, I guess, as it were. So now what I'll do is, and I've got just a couple of minutes, so I'll show you how I set it up. I'll do the same thing like I did before. I'll line this up. I'll clamp it so it's tight. And then there we go. This comes down. Tighten that up. I come in and I'm going to clamp that loop closed. Right there. Tie my first knot to close it up. This is caught back there. Uncatch, please. There we go. And I'll just continue to macrame that closed, glue it, and then we'll be all set. And see, you can see how that sits. Can you see that there? Okay. That's it. And I'll just finish that up and glue it just like I did with that one. So here we go. Let me give you some last looks on this so you can see it. I'll have these done. Claire will have them up on the website so you'll be able to consult the project maps. But I'm pretty pleased with how these came out. I think they have kind of a fun, this I can thread burn away. They kind of have that ancient treasure feeling to it. Like my mom shared earlier, my little treasure story. Let's see if I can get that in there. I want to be really careful and not do anything else. There we go. And if there's a little bit of extra there, I just heat my thread burner and tamp it down just a touch. Same thing there. Not too much because I don't want it to come apart, but I can always add just a touch more glue back there now that everything's burned away. But here's that. Okay, yeah, we love our thread burners around here. The thread burning tool is really good, and we carry them, of course, on our website on beadshop.com. And you can see how really beautifully this will go. And what I'm going to do, why I went for the leather, is that I'm not going to macrame down over the leather. I'm just going to put the leather cords through and then macrame that loop closed. So you'll see that your leather will sit there and there. So we'll have a little bit of a different look to it. Okay. But that's it. That's all she wrote. There they are. Macrame bezel. Okay, so take some, let me get a little tighter so you can take some final looks there. Like I said, you can jump on over to beadshop.com and take a look at the project. We've got a really good comprehensive list of everything you need. This is a great stash buster, especially if you have a disc or a coin or something like that you want to do. It's a little bit of a more advanced project, but it's not too bad. You know, you just need to kind of parse it out. You'll watch the video a few times for sure, but just take it one step at a time, right? The bezeling of the piece, finish that up, and then decide how you want to do the necklace portion. Okay, and I'd love to see what you do and how you create yours. So if you have not already, go follow us on beadshop.com on Instagram. If you post, I had to get a bit of water there. If you post on Instagram, tag us at beadshop.com. And Drea likes to add those to our Beadshop stories. So do that. And that way we can not only, we can see it, but all of us can see the beautiful work that you've done. You also can join us over at the bead table and post what you make from Beadshop projects over there. There's a really lively crowd there, and we love to see you post your makes from Beadshop projects. So if you're not a member already, or if you haven't posted something in a while, or if you've never posted, we'd love to see what you make. So make that a goal in the next couple of weeks to post something you've made. And of course, if you're watching us on our YouTube channel, either live or on the replay, do give us a like, a thumbs up, turn on those notifications so you'll never miss one of our broadcasts. You'll get that notification. And of course, you can find all of the information on the project and the products from today's project right on our website, right at beadshop.com. Go ahead and sign up for our newsletter for the latest discounts, giveaways, and new products. The month of March, you guys, is going to be so chock full of fun stuff. I can't wait to share that with you. Janice is also coming on with me on Friday. So Friday, we have a Janice project. Usually on Fridays, we do the free tip Fridays, and this is going to be kind of an epic one. It's more of a project free tip Friday. She has a really wonderful project that she's going to share with you, and she's going to be on with me. So we'll be doing that one on Friday. And then next week, you guys, I'm going to take the week off. It's my sister's memorial, and I've got some other stuff to do. So I'm giving myself a little bit of a mental health break next week. But I'm going to miss you guys. But we've got some things while I'm away. Don't worry, you'll all be in good hands. Watch the newsletters. We'll tell you which broadcasts to take a look at. Also, our new monthly mix for March will debut. So I'll be back before you know it. I'll be back the second week of March, and we're going to have a lot of fun. I have a great curated collection that's coming up for you in March, and we've got some great projects on the horizon. So thank you, you guys, because again, without all you all, we all here wouldn't be able to do what we love. We appreciate it from the bottom of our hearts, of our little beady hearts. All right, you guys, stay safe. I'll see you on Friday. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye-bye.